This week on the Socratic Cinema podcast.
When I see the ending of WandaVision, I swear to God, if any of you guys spoil me, I'm off the podcast.
There's a big difference in the goal here too, right? The goal of one of these groups is to eradicate a minority, and the goal of the other one is to create a world where equality can exist.
Like, what brought them together really overall is like A, the community, and then B, like the common ground of all hating cops. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Socratic Cinema podcast. I'm Kasey Clark.
I'm Charlie Heatherly.
And my name is James DeLisio.
We have a very special movie for you guys today. We're jumping into Judas and the Black Messiah. We just got out of Black History Month, but you know me, every month is Black History Month. Every Black History year. 2020.
It's 2021.
2021. Oh, let me not go
Kasey
backwards.
just did Black Histories in the past. Wow.
No.
Clip it and ship it.
But sometimes you got to look into the past to figure out what's going on in the future.
Look back to move forward.
Oh, no, literally.
Jeez, Tenet.
Holy pincer movement.
Yeah.
The civil rights pincer movement.
Imagine. Let's just go back and stop all of the people from getting assassinated by the government.
Literally all of them.
All right. But before we get into our analysis, let's hop into our opening thoughts. Charlie, how did you like the movie?
God, I have to. I was so unprepared. I was hoping James would go first, but I'll do it.
Oh,
No. I'll do it. Judas and the Black Messiah. I think number one thing for me, star-studded cast. I mean,
yes,
literally every single actor in this movie whose names I'm about to look up because I forgot all their names. Daniel Kaluuya, fantastic, loved him. Lakeith Stanfield, fantastic, loved him. Jesse Plemons, fantastic, hated him because he was such a bad person. And I think that these like main actors making me feel such strong emotions really points to the quality of the film's performances and also the quality of the film's writing. This, although it's a real story, is so like literary and dramatic, and it's crazy that it happened the way that it did. So to get this like full picture story of such an actually monumental event, I'm shocked that we were not actually taught like this series of steps in like our history classes more, because this is a huge thing. And maybe that points to a bigger flaw with our political system, but that's, for later in the episode. Definitely a very interesting movie. I think that this is probably one of my, I'll put it in the top half, I'll put it in top 10% of historical fictions that I've seen for sure. I think that this gets like an 8.5 easy from me. I don't know why necessarily I wouldn't push it up to a 9. In fact, I'd be fine putting it at a 9 too. Let's put an 8.75 just to be super precise and be super midway with it. But that's my review. Absolutely phenomenal cast, phenomenal story. Watch it.
Yeah. HBO Max, baby. Or in theaters, if you can go to theaters.
We're not sponsored, by the way, but we would like to be.
We aren't sponsored.
You forget the secret third option. Piracy.
Yar.
For legal reasons,
you can play
this
a
is a
sea
joke.
shanty during it and have even a better time.
Y'all sail the 7 seas.
Yarg.
Yarg.
James, what did you think of the movie?
I was a big fan. This was one of the movies that we watched together. We haven't watched a movie all together in a long time. Because obvious reasons. There's a little thing called a pandemic going on, and so it's been a little hard for us to watch movies together. But we watched Judas and the Black Messiah together, and it was a really, really good experience. Sort of being able to like bounce off sort of these ideas that the movie was putting in our heads was very nice, and I think added a lot to the experience. I think the main thing that this movie does really, really well, like Charlie said, is just how literary it feels. It's very well written, and there are so many things where you think to yourself like, oh wow, that's such a great like screenwriting device. It's like, no, that's just real life. That's just how it happened. And the other thing for me, I loved the performances. Obviously Daniel Kaluuya, Lakeith Stanfield, Jesse Plemons, Martin Sheen. They all did great. The soundtrack was also very nice.
Mm.
Um, and I think the main thing that I wanted to point out that I really liked about it was how tense it was. This movie has a really great command of tension, um, that I just really felt and got into, and we can talk more about individual scenes with it. But um, there's just a lot of really really well built tension, and when it boils over well. Um, Gives me some The Departed vibes. Just throwing that out there. Um, if you liked this movie, maybe watch The Departed or vice versa. If I don't know. I mean, obviously, again, The Departed is a fictional story. This is real, which just sort of kind of adds to how crazy it all is. And I'm curious now. Did we learn about Fred Hampton in history class? We all took AP U.S. history. We were all in the same class.
Mhm.
Um, I don't
Mhm.
we learned about like the founders of the Panther Party, but I don't know because Fred Hampton wasn't the founder. He was after, right? He was like
Yeah. He
second
was
wave of
after.
leadership.
He
It was
wasn't
yeah.
he wasn't a he was leader of the Illinois chapter. So
Right,
he
the
wasn't like a
chairman.
yeah, he was the chairman of the Illinois chapter. But Huey, as we see in like the opening, like at the time that Fred Hampton was like kind of moving up, Huey Newton was in prison. So that's why everyone was kind of like, okay, well now we got to get our stuff together because our leader, as we see like in later in the film where it's like everything starts falling apart once Fred's in jail, like Fred kind of like had to step up in that moment.
Right, I see.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't think we learned about specifically Fred Hampton. At least it's not coming to my mind. Maybe we did. Um, but you bring up a good point, Casey, and that there's definitely a little bit of historical context needed to I think fully appreciate it. Like I'm sure there's a lot that even went over my head just because of a lack of historical context. Like all the stuff with the crowns and just sort of the general like I think this movie can be much better appreciated if you already know the story, if you will. Like I knew that Fred Hampton got assassinated. Like I got that. Um, but I didn't really know. I'm not too knowledgeable on this part of history, um, and so I think that sort of definitely plays a factor in your enjoyment of the film. It's a good film to learn from for sure. Like it's very educational, if you will, but um, I think it doesn't have time to teach you all the history, right? So historical context
Yeah.
goes a long way for this one.
Yeah, I definitely agree. For me, I feel like I'm gonna make this like very weird connection, but like stick with try to stay with me.
Of course.
For me, I felt like it related a lot to the structure of Rogue One in the way that you know where it starts and where it ends, but you're figuring out like what happens in between there. And I
Oh,
really
whoa.
I love that like story structure because like like we're focusing on Fred Hampton and but that by the end of the movie he is going to be assassinated, but as James was saying, like there's a whole lot of like history and like events that are going to have to happen to get to that point. And I feel like that also feeds into the tension that you like see, because I feel like with other movies where you just feel tense all the time. Like I was just talking to my mom about it because I had just watched Queen and Slim for my video essay. Ha, shameless plug.
Hey, go check it out. Check
There we
out
Go
both
go.
check
of
it
them.
out.
We had a double
Yeah,
feature. We
we
had a
had a
double
double
feature.
feature.
If you didn't know, I put out a video essay about jazz, and Casey put out a video essay about Queen and Slim. Both are, in my humble, unbiased opinion, I think both are wonderful watches. And go check both of them out. Show them some love on YouTube,
Yes.
which you can find by visiting SocraticCinema.com, our new website. So
Oh my gosh, all
Yeah,
the
go check it
plugs.
out. All the plugs.
all the plugs.
But I just my feelings watching Queen and Slim, like again, that was a movie where that like you're in your heart, you kind of know that something bad's going to happen, whether or not you know, spoiler alert, that they're going to die. But Queen and Slim was a whole lot more scarring and like tense than I
Oh
feel
yeah.
like this movie was, because it was just so like well balanced, I feel like, because you get these like little looks into it. And it's honestly, it feels like not necessarily like a documentary, but just like the way that it's shot and the way that it like includes these little snippets that'll like tie in. Like I'm thinking of specifically the um little inclusions of the PBS, I think it was PBS, like interview that
Right.
Lakeith's character William O'Neill did, and then how it like how throughout the movie it's Lakeith as William O'Neill, and then after the assassination, then it switches to the actual footage of William O'Neill, and that was just oh chef's kiss
Yeah.
for me. And then that's just like the kind of documentary aspects of it. Like as Charlie said, it's just very oh wow. It's just so good. But sorry, I feel like I'm rambling, but it's
Mhm.
so good.
Yeah, no, you're fine, and you make a lot of good points. The documentary thing, I totally agree with. There's a lot of like um, primary sources intercut, like real world stuff, like the interviews you were talking about, and just a lot of the like news footage and headlines and stuff from the opening credits and at the end of the film. They do give it a sort of documentary feel, almost like this is something you might see on like the History Channel, you know, like one of those
Mhm.
documentary specials. It's very much cinematic and very much well done. But you're right, Kasey. It does sort of lend itself a little bit to that sort of more informative format.
I concur.
Yeah.
Charlie concurs.
I concur wholeheartedly. I would like to say that I know some people heard James say that he compared it to like a History Channel documentary and thought, wow, what a dig. That's false. That is like the highest praise a movie can possibly get. Those History Channel documentaries sustained me as a child. So if this is on the same quality, then you know that it's something special.
Oh yeah, if the Charlie Hatherley from the Socratic Cinema podcast says it's good, you better believe those History
Yeah,
Channel documentaries
exactly.
Yeah,
are good.
he's a
I would also
connoisseur,
say
okay?
I am a connoisseur. And in fact, because I'm a connoisseur, I would like to say Kasey's 100% right. And that is the hottest take that I've ever heard, calling this like Rogue One, because this is just the better version of Rogue One, just in plot structure.
Yes.
That's like crazy that you said that because it's so accurate and so true. And if
For
you're a
sure.
Rogue One lover and you somehow liked that movie, you'll like this one even more.
Oh, are we gonna Charlie, I don't want to get into this right now.
Well,
Are we
you
gonna
can move on, James. I
right
was not
here?
attacking you. I was
Right
not
here,
attacking
right
you.
now? What's up, man?
What? You want
I'm
to go?
ready.
You want to go? Huh?
Right here,
Huh?
right now. We're doing it.
You know
Wow,
what? This
we're
film is
not.
about unity.
It is. But I wanted to point out along the same vein of what Kasey was saying about how you know how it's going to end. I think this film is a good example of, and this is sort of an idea that I've had sort of stewing in my head, that spoilers don't always matter. I think that
Mm,
spoilers only really have as much power as you give them. Um, and what I mean by that is, I mean, so in the example of this movie, you know how it's going to end, but that doesn't make the journey of getting there any less impactful. And when the moment comes, it, if anything, is even more impactful because you've had this tension of knowing what's coming, but not quite how you'll get there. And I think that makes for a really, really unique viewing experience. Like, if you watched this movie not knowing that Fred Hampton was going to die, it would be good, but part of the pressure and the experience of the movie is knowing that he's going to die. It's just a matter of how and when. Um,
yeah.
like
And
I
whose
recall
involvement?
Yeah.
exactly, yeah, and who's and all these little mysteries. Like I remember right before I saw Infinity War, I saw a thumbnail of like Stormbreaker in Thanos, that shot. Um, and I was like, oh no, the movie's ruined. But then I saw the movie and yay, lo and behold, it wasn't ruined. I think and this is getting a little bit sidebary, but I think a lot of it has to do, just like with your mindset. If you if you let a spoiler get to you and you like truly believe that because it's been spoiled, you're not going to enjoy the movie, you're probably not going to wind up enjoying the movie. But
Yeah.
if you get spoiled and think, all right, I know where we're going, but how do we get there? And you sort of don't let the mystery escape you just because you know how it ends. And I think this movie is just a really good example of that. Uh, yeah,
Wow. That
yeah,
is controversial,
Yeah.
what you just said. That's wild. And
firm believer.
I disagree, but you know.
Really?
Well, yeah,
Ooh.
I mean, so with your Infinity War example specifically, and I'll actually take it to Endgame as well, because I think they're very similar movies to compare to. If I had seen the clip of Captain, and spoiler alert for these movies, I guess,
I guess.
highest grossing film of all time, so you better have seen it. But when Captain America says Avengers assemble and he has Mjolnir in hand, and then everyone
Oh.
comes through the portals, if I did not see that live in the theaters for the first time, I would have been so disappointed. Like, are you kidding me? Having that moment on the big screen with the energy of the crowd is something else. And I think that you're right. I think that knowing the end to this movie, specifically Judas and the Black Messiah, makes it better because the movie is structured that way. It is structured around the idea of there being this sort of constant underlying tension, and you knowing that no matter what Fred Hampton does or how good everyone is, there will always be a betrayal, and Fred Hampton will always die at the end. So it depends on the way the movie structures itself. Like, historical dramas sort of have to deal with this whole spoiler thing. You know, you need to know the ending because, I mean, it happened already. It's history. But
Yeah.
with a lot of other movies, there are moments that sort of have to be had in the viewing experience itself. And I think that they make that better. Like, when I see the ending of WandaVision, I swear to God, if any of you guys spoil me, I'm off the podcast.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
I'm so invested in watching that with my family and seeing it with them and experiencing that reaction with them for the first time, that if I knew beforehand, I would just feel so cheap.
I see your point, Charlie. And I think it's just a more of a personal thing for me. And I think you make a really good point about the whole point that's just sort of how historical dramas work. You're definitely right there. I mean, that's kind of part of the fun of the whole genre. But I think for me, it's just more about being able to make the best of a bad situation. And pulling a little tenet here. This may or may not be my second time making this argument. So I have future knowledge. I also think part of the fun is sort of like you still, and this is a very like cheesy altruist point, but I think it can be fun when you know what's going to happen, but no one else does. Sort of like when you watch a show for the second time with a friend. I think the silver lining of having something spoiled for you is like you still get to see everyone else's reaction. Again, it still sucks being spoiled, and it's definitely better experiencing it raw. But I don't know. I just think there are some silver linings that don't get appreciated. But Kasey, I think you ought to be the mediator of this one.
Okay. Well, I see both sides. I completely understand Charlie. Like, if someone spoiled something that I was super invested in, I would flip tables too. And I completely understand James, where it's like, getting a clip or like a screen grab of a movie doesn't completely like ruin the experience. Like, it doesn't have to be detrimental to your watching if you like don't let it. Like me, I was like a psycho as a child, and I would like read kind of like the last few pages of
Uh,
books.
I still do that.
Yeah, no, I
And
still do
so
that. I will
like
read the first page and the last
see,
page of every
yeah.
book I read.
See, okay, I'm glad that it wasn't just me because my mom was like, "What are you kidding? Like no one else does that." But yeah, and I feel like even for because I think the main thing that I'm avoiding spoilers for right now is Attack on
Oh,
Titan.
you
Is
better.
like even if I yes, James, I'm
No,
trying. I'm
but it's
trying and
better if she
trying.
just experiences it, James, like so that she can see our
That's
reactions,
listen.
Yeah.
Oh, there are so many amazing jokes and references I can make right now, but I don't want to spoil it for you guys. So I'm gonna.
Yeah.
Oh,
But even for Attack on Titan, like I remember seeing something where it's like, oh, I feel like this is a spoiler, but without context, it means absolutely
Yeah.
nothing. Like you can give me a name. Like remember, I sent you like a meme, and you're like, oh yeah, there's like a spoiler in there. I didn't know who Rod Reese was until I saw
For
him.
sure.
Like,
Yeah, I remember that.
and I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But it's like I feel like that too. Like if it's a spoiler that's truly out of context, like it really doesn't change a thing.
Yeah, and even
You know?
I love the
Like
trend of the out of context spoilers because those sometimes even make it more fun. Those really do enhance the experience
they're
Mhm.
so
because then
funny.
when you're watching it, it's like, oh, that's what the Nutcracker meant. Like, oh, that's what that dog.
Yeah.
Right? It's sort of like a guessing game. It's like bingo before you
Yes.
watch. Place your bets. What's this one gonna be?
Very true. Yeah, I mean, I would say out of context spoilers to me are not the same as like big plot. I'm going to tell you what happens or show you what happens spoilers.
No,
Like
yeah, not at all.
out of
That's
context
fair.
spoilers to
That's
me are
fair. Yeah.
super duper fun. And although I have my beliefs, I will have to say the science is with James on this one. There have been studies conducted, and when people read books, it is better to skim the book, read a plot overview, and then go into the book, like read it all the way through. People enjoy it more and they get through the story quicker, plus they understand it better. So, cool science there.
Whoa. It's like,
Wonderful.
did your
Go
guys'
on.
parents ever tell you when you were like building something to read the instructions all the way through before you start?
Yeah, but then I would never do that because my dad would never do that, and we would just fail together for about 3 hours and have a fun time with it.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I would never do it, and then I would suffer the consequences when I couldn't, when I was convinced Lego forgot to send me this piece because I lost it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it sort of reminds me just the same thing, kind of like have a general idea of what you're doing, and I think that's true. I definitely do that, like with books and stuff. I for sure do that, but I think this was a productive and healthy sidebar. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if you
Yeah.
came here like for Judas and the Black Messiah. But this was relevant. We're discussing historical fiction as a genre and whether or not knowing the ending makes it better. So, yeah,
I have a question.
yeah,
I
yeah,
have a question about Judas and the Black Messiah, very
Yes.
specifically.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Bible people around me, I need you to lend me your wisdom.
Here we go,
Wait,
baby.
whoa. I'm not sure if that was a here we go, as in we're gonna fight or not.
No, as in
Oh,
like,
yeah.
let's like my time to shine.
Bro, Charlie gets
I get
immediately
killed.
defensive. Be like, whoa,
Well,
whoa, whoa, whoa.
Dude, Lady Bird, watching that back, it was an all-out war, man. It was a funny war.
It was.
It was
It
so
was
funny.
hilarious, but it was a battle. But back to Judas and the Black Messiah. So I'm curious. I know the story of Judas. Like, I know that he's the one that betrayed Jesus, and Peter was in there somewhere, and he was like, no, Judas, what have you done? Is the surface level betrayal within this movie, is that as far as the Judas sort of comparison goes? Or are there deeper, more similar plot points that I am not aware of that, connect between the two stories?
I don't know. Listen, I'm doing.
I can think of a few.
I'll let you go for it.
But James, you
I mean,
finish.
look, I'm going through Father Mike Schmitz's Bible in a Year podcast, and we're still in like Moses time. So I'll let you know. Oh, we're past that. We are in Deuteronomy and Numbers. We're in the
my favorites.
Oh, gotcha. We get
I
old
know.
man Moses.
But
fed up.
he's
Moses.
tired of the Israelites. But yeah, no, I mean, I think really to me, I kind of just saw it as like, all right, Judas is Bill and the Black Messiah is Fred Hampton. If this truly was living up to the film's title, Fred Hampton would have come back to life at the end, but that didn't happen.
Well, we got time.
Hey,
We can get our
it's
civil
been a little
rights
longer than 3 days, but it's
movement
okay.
going.
Hey, the idea lives on. The idea is resurrected.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
I'm happy.
that's the whole point.
Go ahead, though, Kasey. You know more than I do.
Okay, I'm not sure about that, but so what I think, man, it's been a while. Miss Kiwani's Bible
Sunday
study.
school.
Sunday school, yeah. But I think, Judas renounces the Lord several times. I don't know how many times, but I feel like that relates to Bill. His name's William, but he goes by
Wild Bill.
Bill, right?
Album.
Wild Bill. All right. Um, Bill like talking to dang it. Was it because I get so confused because I think that FBI guy's name was Phil
It
too.
was hold on, IMDb to the rescue. Roy Mitchell.
Roy. Okay. So Bill talking to Roy, being like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm not a Panther. I don't yada yada yada. Like I'm not like." What was the scene where he's like, "Oh, you're more," where Roy says to Bill, that's like, "Oh, you're more Panther than something else, or than informant or whatever," and Bill being like, "No, no, it's not like that." Yada yada yada. And so I feel like that's another connection. And then I believe both Judas and Bill die because we know in the exit credits we learned that Bill killed himself, took his own life due to,
Guilt.
I believe, well, yeah, on the IMDb it's like guilt, shame,
Yeah.
um and again with Judas I believe that was also the case.
Judas, yeah,
So
he did kill himself after he learned that they were going to crucify Jesus.
Wait, I also have another fact.
yeah, so it kind of connects like all the
Yeah.
way through.
So I'm reading
Yeah,
a
go,
review by
Charlie.
John Leone on Google Reviews, and this is what he said about the Judas the Betrayer bit. The story of Judas the Betrayer goes to the heart of tribal and racial loyalty. Our allegiance to our own is universally understood, and its sale for 30 pieces of silver, cited scornfully as the cowardly, jealous act of a mad fool who has gotten what is most important. Is that true? 30 pieces of silver? Is that within the Bible?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
basically sold Jesus out to the high priest.
So then that's also here with the like gas station and $5 or whatever Roy gives him.
Yeah. Hey, sidebar.
Yeah.
I would be so mad if I went through all that and I got keys to a gas station instead of cold hard cash.
Yeah, what the hell?
Like, I get the whole teach a
Yeah.
man to fish and he'll whatever, give a man a fish, whatever, whatever, right?
Put yourself up by your
Yeah,
own
give him I'll give him a business. Or it's like when your grandma gives you money and then she's like, I want you to invest this. It's like, no, I just sold out Fred Hampton. Give me money.
So I can like
I know,
leave or
because the whole time we were
something,
watching this movie, I was like, hey, look, like this sucks, but you got to do what you got to do for the bag. Am I right? And I was team bag chaser the whole movie. And then in the end, he didn't even get the bag. He got assets. Like, okay, rich dad, poor dad. It's like, it just made me so like frustrated. I would have just been like, you know what? Nah, screw you. I'm gonna just yeah. It just made me mad. Sidebar over.
right? And he still did it, and that's what makes me so.
But at that point, what other choice do you
upset.
have? I mean, you can't be like, no.
Yeah,
you
you've
just got to take
already-
what you can get, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you decided down the path. You
I
got the
just,
man killed. Like, you might as well take the reward for your horrible action, right? Like, you did the worst thing already.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah,
that
there's
there's
not
not a lot
really
of
much else
redemption
you
in
can
being
do.
like, no, I won't be paid for the murder. Like, I don't know.
Hey, well, Paul
Yeah.
Paul
Wow.
the apostle like murdered Christians and Catholics and stuff, and then now he's a saint. You know, who maybe Judas had a future in front of him.
There's hope for me
You
yet.
know.
Hope for me yet.
No.
Charlie doesn't kill Christians. He just makes them feel really bad about themselves in online debates.
Wait,
I'm joking. Charlie's not a
The-
keyboard warrior.
I'm not a keyboard warrior at all. I also learned a fact about wafers, the communion wafers the other day. There's a difference between the consecration and the unconsecrated ones, because the unconsecrated ones are just like regular things. Like they don't matter. So in Lady Bird, they were just like nomming on like regular wafers then, because they probably were not consecrated at that point.
They weren't. I know. It was just more of like a, oh man, this is probably not what those are for.
Mhm.
Right. That was more of they're not committing sacrilege or anything. Like, you can buy unconsecrated wafers.
Mhm.
Blasphemy.
Wow.
Yeah, that was just more of like an act of intent,
Fair. I would also like to say that this is the best Sunday school class I've ever had in my life.
I'm living, dude. I'm sorry. I've had a great time this episode. This has just been, for such a dark subject matter, this has been a peachy recording session. Is that fun to say? I
Right.
love you
Oh,
guys.
it's so fun to talk about racial injustice.
Oh,
We love you
you
too.
too, James.
We should have had Ralph Walker on the
Man,
show.
I would
I
have
should have
loved
asked
to.
him to be a guest.
I'd be so
Let's
down.
do a follow-up episode and I'll ask him to record with us.
Man, yes, an
Yo.
He
interview.
already did one. He already
On Judas
in
and the
fact,
Black
he's-
Messiah?
Yeah, he's on top of the game.
What?
Everyone check out Ralph.
Oh,
Everyone check out
period.
Ralph Walker and Chris Lose's interview about Judas and the Black Messiah.
Oh, Chris Lose.
When it's out,
period.
I don't know if it'll be out or not, but check it out. Ralph is a friend of mine, an ex Black Panther who knew Fred Hampton, IRL,
Crazy.
as the cool kids say. He's
Mhm.
Ralph as a wise man, very seen the world, very learned, very experienced, tome of wisdom. Love him.
Mm.
Go Google Ralph Walker while we're here. That's all.
Public service announcement about Ralph Walker. Done.
Everyone needs to know, dude. I swear they got to make a movie about him someday.
Let's be the studio that does it. Let's
Yes.
create Socratic Studios, and then we'll go ahead and make the Ralph Walker movie. And we'll call it like Walker or something. I don't know. That might be copyrighted because of Walker, Texas Ranger. But
Just Ralph.
the movie.
Okay, between Ralph or Walker, I think we should do Walker.
Does he have a middle name like Stacy or Lucy
Walker,
or something
yeah.
that we could go with?
Oh, maybe. I don't know. Anyways,
You're not really friends with Ralph Walker then if you don't know his middle
Yeah.
name.
whatever, Wayne.
Okay, Michael.
Wayne.
I don't know if that's your middle name or not.
Nope.
I just chose a biblical name and I was like, his entire family's sort of named with that scheme, so probably something there.
Oh yeah, I mean, my brothers and I are Peter, James, and John.
Does one of you have the middle name of
yes.
Judas and you'll go up to betray the family?
Imagine. But I, as far as the biblical thing with the name, I first of all, that's just a really clever name. Like whoever thought up with that name for the movie, good on them, right?
Honest.
Because a lot of historical and like
Period.
biopics and stuff have really lame names. Like, oh, we're doing a biopic about a band. Let's just name it their most famous song. I'm looking at you, Bohemian Rhapsody. I'm looking at you, Yesterday. Like they probably
Yesterday was a biopic about the Beatles. That's crazy.
in an alternate timeline, it's a biopic.
Sure.
But they could have just been like, we'll call the movie Hampton. It's like, no, let's call it freaking Judas and the Black Messiah. Like, wow,
It's
that's such a
so
cool
Mhm.
name. And the
good.
posters, have you guys seen the posters? This movie has like their marketing game,
Yeah.
their style is on point. I love it.
So good. Shaka King did that.
He did that.
Period.
End of story.
Point blank. Period.
What else has Shaka King done?
Yes. Oh, I'm not sure. While I look it up, fun facts actually that they were working with the Fred Hampton Jr., so Fred Hampton's son, and the Black Panther Cubs, the same Illinois chapter
yeah.
that his father
Mm.
ran the entire time. Like it was so it was so great. Like I was watching I guess you can call it like a companion piece. Like on HBO Max, they have all sorts of like separate interviews and stuff that they did on Zoom and they put with the movie. And they're just telling all these like stories about how they like have these really in-depth conversations. And so like, oh, and they brought up this quote, which I think, it's directly shown in the movie, but it's something to really like think about where it's like where Fred Hampton or Daniel Kaluuya in the movie says heighten the contradictions, which is so like interesting to me when you're thinking of this whole situation where obviously because it was set up by the FBI, like the assassination attempt and like all that. Oh, and Shaka King wrote it as
Good for
well.
him.
Well, yeah, produced it and wrote it. Sorry, I got totally sidetracked.
You're good.
But and I completely forgot what I was saying.
Happens to the best of
Can I
us.
say
All right.
something? Because
Sorry.
you inspired
Yeah,
me,
you can say
Kasey.
something.
That whole contradictions line. What's really crazy to me is that J. Edgar Hoover, who was the head of the FBI at this time, really Fred Hampton is just like the greatest contradiction to J. Edgar Hoover that could ever exist. Right? Like J. Edgar Hoover is a white capitalist man in power who loves the government And then Fred Hampton is a black socialist, I would assume, socialist, communist,
Sounded like it.
teetering around there,
Yes.
who wants to essentially rewrite the government of the United States to actually make it, a bit fairer for some people. So like that whole struggle, not just in ideology, but having these two massive figures like go head to head against each other was so entertaining throughout this entire film. And it makes it even crazier that the one that we elected was J. Edgar Hoover. So
Yeah.
Wait, is the head of the FBI elected?
no,
This is a semantic
he's
question
appointed
entirely.
by the president, but J. Edgar Hoover later became president.
You're the president, yeah. Which is so crazy. Like they really allowed. Well, I don't think
Oh, I see what you're saying.
like
Never mind.
as they were saying in the end of the movie that like the information about the government's involvement, like how you can see like there's well, okay. So context essentially is that the FBI was doing this thing called hold on, I'm looking for the actual name of it so that I don't mess it up. So it's called COINTELPRO or Counterintelligence Program, where essentially they were gathering, as we see in the movie, like all sorts of kind of selective like clips and selective voice memos and stuff to like essentially make these civil rights leaders look bad or dangerous to the point where their deaths could be justified.
Like we see them reaching so hard to try and make warrants and stuff.
Yes, exactly. And you see that with like the phony arrest charges, like how they arrested Fred Hampton just so that they could get him like in jail or kind of like put a stain on his name, as well as knowing that if he's not around to run the chapter, then essentially they set up that Bill would be able to kind of move up in the ranks and kind of be way more involved. So when Fred would get out, it would be like, oh yeah, Bill took care of this, Bill took care of that. So that would like directly affect his their like relationship. Which is very interesting because we see like throughout the movie, Bill and Fred kind of like they get closer, but it's always like you always want to think they're like, oh yeah, well they were like best friends, they're like all this stuff, but like no, because again, you're following like the Judas and Jesus thing. Like Jesus was friends with his disciples, but like again, there's like this tension there where like Judas never really like opened himself up. So like Bill never really opened himself up until maybe like after Fred like returned, where he was being super like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, having doubts and stuff.
That's a really interesting point. The whole FBI half, I mean, they've definitely been up to some. Our FBI and CIA, I don't think it's a secret that they've done some shady stuff before. What I thought was really interesting was Roy's continued insistence that like Black Panthers are just like the black version of the KKK, you know? That was
Crazy.
just
Oh
something
yeah.
that
Ooh,
was
that
something
made
that
me so
stuck with me.
upset.
And that's a comparison that a lot of people make.
A lot of
Because a
people
lot of
make-
people don't have, and I mean, look, I'm not claiming to be like the most knowledgeable on the Black Panthers or whatever, or I'm not even necessarily like endorsing. Uh, Obviously, I'm not endorsing the KKK by any means. You know, what I'm saying here is that a lot of people have this conception, like Roy did, that the Black Panthers were like this crazy, they just like go out and shoot random people on the street and they lynch white people. And it's like, dude, no. They also, like,
None of that
yeah, it's like
happens.
they also do, like breakfast programs for impoverished children. Like there's a big difference in the goal here too, right? The goal of one of these groups is to eradicate a minority, and the goal of the other one is to create a world where equality can exist. Like
No,
very
exactly.
different.
Like, yeah, the narratives like that they create is really like interesting to look at, because even when I was younger, like learning about the Black Panther Party, like they don't talk to you about necessarily like what they did for their community. Like usually the brief is that they're very like pro Black people having guns and then black people being organized. And they don't talk about the education. They don't talk about what they were doing to kind of like better the
Yeah.
community. Um, which was Fred Hampton's main thing. That's why, like, throughout the movie, he's going around making the Rainbow Coalition. Like, he's trying to bring all these people together, and that was seen as like a threat. You know, like there's this like classic quote that nothing's more dangerous than like a educated black man. And then it's like, and they're socialists, and they got weapons on top of that. Like again,
They were just
it was
they're
really
set up against them.
a
Yeah.
losing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was they're set up to
That's
lose.
good. Yeah.
Sadly.
Yeah,
But
yeah. That's it's interesting, like you were saying, just about the narrative that sort of gets spun around them, because like, obviously they were more militaristic than like Martin Luther King's, right? Obviously they,
yeah.
they were militaristic. That's just a fact, and that whether you think that's good or bad is entirely up to you. But yeah, no, I had never heard of like the community, um the community services that they offered, and all these positive aspects about them, right? You get a very one-sided story. uh and so I think this movie was very sort of insightful in like seeing more about it as a whole. And you make a good point that Fred's main thing was not, leading military coups. It was bettering his
Yeah.
community, right? And like even with the kids, he's very strong on like self-improvement. Like there's talks about like, I
Yes.
will build up my body and my mind. And they have a lot of very like respect based things, with the whole like, we don't take liberties with our sisters. Whether or not Fred
Mhm.
followed
Well,
that
Well,
yeah,
himself is another question. That was a recurring joke about the liberties.
he's like, "Y'all
Yeah, I
don't
will take the liberties I
take
want to.
liberty."
um, no, but I am very much a sort of a fan of that sort of approach that was taken and sort of given a time in the spotlight in the movie. Just very, the dangers of a single story, right? You gotta learn as much as you can, and I just thought this movie was very informative and showed me a lot of stuff I didn't know before. So I think that sort of was my biggest takeaway is just like learning more about the Black Panthers and sort of getting out of that one mindset about like they wanted to shoot white people and it's like, well, they did other stuff too.
Even think their main goal,
Right, yeah.
or like even one of their expressed beliefs at all, was to shoot white people.
No,
'Cause
yeah,
I'm
I
not even
wasn't
sure
trying
if
to.
they were
That was
Marxist in terms of like, we need to violently overthrow the bourgeoisie. Like, it to me it feels, and this was a big misconception that I feel like I probably had about them. I was under the impression that they were more militia like in their structure, but to me at least it seems that they're focused more on having the guns as a means of like warding off potential danger. Now personally,
yeah,
I don't like, and this is just my
Mhm.
political philosophy, I'm not the biggest fan of the Panthers because I'm not really the biggest fans of guns in total. But I think that a lot of their core beliefs are really interesting. And the social programs that you guys were talking about were obviously incredibly good things that always get swept under the rug, right? So what this movie does is paint a very fair picture of the Panthers, I would say.
yeah,
Although it's probably leaning towards better, I mean, just because, if you're a protagonist of a movie, that's naturally sort of how it goes. It definitely showed the downsides of some of the Panther ideology and leadership as well. As we mentioned, Fred Hampton sort of like the whole don't mess around with sisters thing, you don't follow that rule 100% is what he says. But yeah, I think that if you want to get more educated on the Panthers, definitely watch this movie, and I think you'll come out of it with a very fair take, I would say. But the thing that I'm interested in getting educated about is the Crowns. Who the
yeah.
heck are they?
I don't
I
know.
have
I
no
want to know
clue.
too.
Anyone know the
As far
Crowns?
as militia,
Okay.
they seem much more militia.
Yeah,
like,
they seem like an actual army.
Yeah. So essentially, from what I understand, the segments that we see through the Rainbow Coalition that he brings together, so there's all these sort of like, as you said, like more like militant militia style like groups. So we have like the Crowns, which is kind of more like way more militant and like, this is our territory, like y'all know you're not supposed to be going out around here. and very like we have guns pointed at you at all times, like very kind of like a foil to the Black
Mm.
Panthers that we see. And then we also, I don't think they're ever named, but the Puerto Ricans kind of like militia. And then we also have the white supremacist. I don't think
That's
they were
crazy that they
necessarily
got into
KKK.
Wild.
Right. But the thing is, like, what brought them together really overall is like A, the community, and then B, like the common ground of all hating cops.
for real.
Cab is real
That'll
in
do
this
a
movie.
lot for you. Yeah. But essentially, like, yeah, so you have these different militia groups that are put together to kind of protect their like said communities, you know. So we don't get a lot of like background into maybe like the Puerto Rican groups or the white supremacist group. But we can, from the time that we spend with the Black Panther chapter, that we can assume that they're trying to do the same things, and whether or not they're like getting off the ground is like another question, because we even see with the Black Panthers that like a lot of their stuff they're trying, but they keep getting like hit with these like roadblocks and roadblocks and roadblocks. And whether or not that's because they're like more mainstream or they have more like eyes on them, that could also be argued. But I feel like having them all come together was like, it was kind of like a last resort, you know, because I don't necessarily think the white supremacists would have jumped into being in the Rainbow Coalition with like other minorities, but they had like a shared goal of what they wanted. And I think just the crowns, it feels very like Sharks and Jets from
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
West Side Story, where it's like we want to do the same thing, but we both can't do it at the same time. Um, and just being very yeah, territorial, I think, because obviously we see the crowns who do stuff that's a little like we again shadier, you know, like when they're putting, there's the scene in the bar where they're putting all the like billiard balls in a cloth, and I was like, see, now we need to get out
Yeah.
of here, because
Mhm.
they know how to fashion weapons out of everyday
Mhm.
items. And that tells me all that I really like need to know. But it's just, I think they were way more about like protecting the community and being more violent, whereas Fred and the Black Panthers were more about like community building, which is why in the conversations they have, they're like, imagine like our powers together, like what that could do for the community and for each other, because you want to protect them and I want to protect them too and educate them, but we can't do that if we're fighting each other. Um, but yeah.
For sure. I'm peeping at the clock. I honestly don't know because I think I started the clock late, but I think we're approaching the hour mark if we haven't already passed it. Um, Not that I mind. I mean, this has been a great conversation. I think this is a really fun, not fun, but well, I had fun. I think it was a good
There you
conversation.
go.
Is my point. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, so I think we're gonna have to start wrapping it up here, but definitely I think we all highly recommend this movie. Like Charlie said, it gives you a very fair view of the Panthers. It's one of the best historical drama biopics. I think it's great. We talked about some biblical imagery. We talked about spoilers and whether they matter. I think we covered our bases pretty well here, gang. Um, Anyone have any parting words before we go to the spiel zone?
Ooh. I just want to say Dominique Fishback did great. This is like her third movie officially, and I think that she did really good as Deborah Johnson. A fun fact that she actually wrote the poem that Deborah says to Fred Hampton about being a
Oh,
mother. Um,
Whoa.
but yeah, she's super cool.
That's a
So
really
check
good
her
poem.
out.
Yeah, I mean, as Kasey said, I think that Dominique Fishback did a fantastic job. And now I'm gonna go watch Trial of the Chicago 7 because it's basically a sister piece to this movie. So I'm gonna have a great time there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
pretty much. All right. Well, ladies and gents, it's been another beautiful episode of the Socratic Cinema podcast. My name is James DeLisio, and I've been joined, as always, by my lovely co-hosts, Charlie Heatherly and Kasey Clark, the Three Musketeers. You know them, you love them, yada, yada, bing, bong, boom.
Woot woot.
Thanks so much for watching, listening, whatever you will. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave a like, leave a comment if you're on YouTube. Just go ahead and subscribe to us on the podcast app of your choice so you never miss an episode. And click that notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode there either. We put out podcasts every week. Sometimes instead of a podcast, we do a video essay if we're feeling spry. So, just be here. Big things. You won't want to miss it. Socratic Cinema for the future. If you would like to support the show, you can become a patron and support us for as little as $1 a month and get access to lots of cool things like episodes early, asking us questions on air, having your name in the descriptions, and all sorts of fun little benefits. Also, be sure to check out our website, socraticcinema.com, where you can find all of our socials and Patreon and YouTube and access to everything all in one place at socraticcinema.com. It's a lot easier to spiel now that we have it all consolidated in one place. Isn't that fun? But thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for listening. We have been Socratic Cinema.
Adios.